Every week, NFL teams battle for a victory. The members of the RoundTable battle to rank the top 10 teams in the NFL. Guests bring their arguments and defend their top 10. Hosted by Thomas Brown, this is the Rankings RoundTable.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I present to you a Week 16's edition of the Rankings Roundtable Show. I am your host, of course, Thomas Brown Jr. You can see on the bottom of the screen. And I promise you, on this week's episode, I promise that I don't talk about leaving like Tyreek Hill today. I won't actually leave the Team MBS Media crew today because I've been replaced, because that's not the case. No Devondre Campbell going on over here, okay? I'm here and I'm here to stay, all right? This week, though, I don't have anybody with me, so it's just me and you tonight, all right? It's going to be a lot of fun, a lot of interaction, a lot of things to talk about from this past week's of football. And let's dive into it, okay? Now, this past week has kind of been an establishment of who the good teams are and who the bad teams are, and who is, starting to make a concrete position in the playoffs coming up shortly. But with some of those teams there, boy, oh boy, do they have some injuries to dive into. So that's what we're going to start talking about for starters. Obviously, as you may know, TJ Watt of the Pittsburgh Steelers is injured from Sunday's game against Eagles. We have David Montgomery, who is done for the season with the MCL injury. And we have Patrick Mahomes, who's on a little bit of a bad ankle, a little bit of a high ankle sprain right now. So I just want to take a few moments to kind of dive into, those players and how much those injuries are impacting your teams, okay? Now, for starters, TJ Watt. This guy, I remember him very candidly sacking Jalen Hurts on 2 occasions this past Sunday. It was very hard to watch, despite the Eagles beating the Steelers. I think with TJ Watt being gone, it's one of those things where you wonder if this is the turning point for the Steelers going forward. Okay, now obviously they are one of the top defenses in the NFL in so many different defensive statistical categories. But you not having TJ Watt there, it's a brutal loss. Now, we're trying to figure out if he's going to play this weekend or if he's going to, if the Steelers are going to wait it out a little bit. They, at this point in time in the year, because they haven't locked up their division, they cannot afford to lose him for an extended period of time. So I honestly hope and pray that it's not a injury where it's going to be worrisome for their defense, because their defense without TJ Watt, I have no idea. You're missing out on 12 sacks almost by TJ Watt alone. That pressure is not something you can easily replace. So hopefully, as far as the Steelers are concerned, they don't have to miss him for long. He's a huge part of their defense for sure. And especially this week, you got Baltimore, so you got to deal with Lamar and Derrick Henry and that offense who showed up against the lowly Giants this past Sunday. Cannot afford to lose them for an extended period of time, man. So that's the wishes for the Steelers on them with TJ Watt being out. Another team is, of course, David Montgomery, running back for the Detroit Lions. I feel like with the Detroit Lions, we are getting to that point where they are losing way too much. Too many guys to injury. A lot of their defensive players are out due to injury. Their top defensive tackle was hurt this past Sunday. I mean, the list goes on and on. Carlton Davis hurt. David Montgomery, as I said, is dealing with an MCL injury. He's going to be out for the rest of the year. You got to ask yourself, if you're a Lions fan, like, is this the beginning of the end? Like, all these injuries from all these different positions, like, you got to wonder if this is just all it's going to be. You know, you have David Montgomery, a guy who has had 775 yards rushing so far this year, being very pivotal and very vital to that Lions offense. A Lions offense that you can also make the argument is still fairly loaded without him. But he's a very crucial instrument as far as how the offense goes and how they pace the offense up when it comes to their drives. I mean, losing Aiden early on in the year, losing McNeil. I mean, you're starting to get guys off the street now. Like, it's kind of concerning. There's not too many games where Jared Goff can throw for 5 touchdowns. And isn't it ironic that Jared Goff played in a game where he threw 5 interceptions and won a game, and then has a game where he throws 5 touchdowns and loses a game? I never thought I would see that coming, but that's the state of the Detroit Lions, man. So I'm curious, especially with the division that they're in. They can go from being the number 1 seed to arguably the 5th seed of the playoffs. I know that sounds crazy to say, but you got Minnesota that could easily take the number 1 spot. The Philadelphia Eagles could easily take the number 1 seed. It's pretty rough in Detroit. And I honestly genuinely feel bad because this is a team, a franchise who throughout all of my lifetime has sucked. They have been in a lot of people's stinky 5 for years, okay? Like, they were irrelevant. And they made some changes in the front office. They got Dan Campbell a head coach, Jared Goff in a trade with Stafford, Amon-Ra St. Brown as a wide receiver that they drafted, Jahmyr Gibbs, Sam Laporta, David Montgomery that they got from Chicago. It's brutal. Can the Packers and the Vikings? I think if we're asking which team would have a better shot, it would probably be Minnesota out of the two. It's one of those cases where the Vikings have won 7 straight, and you got to respect that. Green Bay, there can be games where they are on fire, like they have been the last 4 weeks, where they've had 30-plus points. I've also seen them have a case where Jordan Love has a hard time making complete balls for whatever reason it may be. Throwing interceptions haphazardly, the list goes on and on. So if you're asking which team I would rather trust to get that number 1 seed out of the two, I would go with Minnesota. But, I mean, if the Packers do it, it wouldn't surprise me at all. So, you know, that's the best I can really say as far as that argument. It's a toss-up, though. You can definitely make the argument for both teams, but I would go with Minnesota for sure. But, yeah, just brutal season, it seems like, which is kind of crazy to say when you have 12 wins on the year. But, man, you have such a high, and then to have all these injuries happen on both sides of the football, it's hard to come back from, for sure. And I feel for you, Detroit fans, because this is the most relevance you've gotten in all of America in quite a long time. So we'll see what happens going forward, especially in the playoffs. Maybe they can mess around and shock us. But boy, oh boy, it's getting a little bit tricky for them. So that's the issue going on with David Montgomery in Detroit. Lastly, we got to talk about NFL's lover boy, the best quarterback in, you could say, the last 5 years. It's been Patrick Mahomes. quarterback of the two-time Super Bowl defending champs in the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, he's dealing with a high ankle sprain, and I'm seeing a lot of discourse about whether he should, the Chiefs are going to allow him to play this Saturday against Houston, or they're going to wait him out until the following week when they go against the Steelers. I also find it interesting how they scheduled it up. They had the Texans and the Chiefs this week, Ravens and Steelers this week. Then next week, you have the Chiefs and Steelers, and you have the Texans and Ravens. It's kind of crazy how they map that all out. Pretty smart, if you ask me, as far as giving people breaks. But I think with Patrick Mahomes, and you can say this about a lot of players in the NFL, that if he was able to play through it, I think there would not be a conversation about him playing this week. But the fact that there's a conversation about him potentially being out and possibly missing next week, you could make the argument that, maybe we might need to be patient here. Because you got to remember, with the Kansas City Chiefs, they do have to, they don't have to win out all their games to get the number one seed. They can win 2 of the last 3. That's enough to have the number one seed locked up, and that's good for them. And also, you got to factor in that as much as I just lauded the schedule, they are a team that's going to be playing 2 games in 10 days. So it's one of those things where you have to really wonder, do you want Patrick Mahomes to be out there right now when you don't really need to? I don't know. But yeah, the conversation about whether he's going to play or not, if we're having those conversations, Patrick Mahomes is probably not playing this week. If I was the Chiefs, I would probably just not have him play this week and then have him play the following week against Baltimore. Against the Steelers and go from there. But that's just my 2 cents on that. I don't really feel like I said, with them having the roster and the season that they've had, you can afford to have a break with Patrick Mahomes this week. Julio should rest Patrick Mahomes. Of course, there's nothing that's needed to be done on the Chiefs end, on Patrick Mahomes end. They could have Carson Wentz out there, me and you at wide receiver, and still mess around and still win this game. It sounds crazy to say, but with a team that finds a way to win week in and week out, I can't put that past them, all right? So even with them missing Patrick Mahomes, we'll see how much of a difference it makes. Obviously, I am a fan of a team that had Carson Wentz as their quarterback for a few years. So I have an idea of how it may or may not go. I will let you in a little secret. You might be doomed for an interception. You might. Okay? It might happen. If I know Carson Wentz as well as I do, you might be due for an interception. Just because he's right behind Patrick Mahomes does not mean he's got rid of all his issues. So just prepare for that in advance, Chiefs fans. But high ankle sprain. Look, I would just rest him this week, get him back into the fold next week, and just knock out the rest of the year. So that's Mahomes, man. That's the Chiefs. A team who, by the way, I wonder, is this the most scrutinized 12-plus win team in my life? I have to think. I had to think about all the teams over the years that's had 12-plus wins, and we just gave them Super Bowl aspirations, basically ticketed them without any questions asked. They were one of, if not the best team in the league, and that was it, and that was all. I do not recall so much criticism on a team that has 12 wins in my lifetime. It's just mind-boggling to me. I don't know how many times we have to keep going over this year in and year out. These are the Kansas City Chiefs. They do not have to win by 40 points all the time. They do not have to run for 200 yards all the time. They do not need to be shutting people out. Literally, if they want to win a game 35-30, they could. If they want to win a game 20-17, they could. Okay? I think everybody needs to officially let go of those Tyreek Hill years where they were just having 5 touchdowns in the first half. Those days are kind of over. Okay? I mean, it's starting to look promising with Rashee Rice and, him being in the fold with Travis Kelce. But that's not who they are now. They just find a way to win, being physical, having one of the best defenses in the league, and not making the crucial mistakes that other teams, in their case, their opponents, find a way to make week in and week out. Okay, so that's my thoughts on the injuries that's affecting some of these future, playoff teams as we go into the following week. But I know what y'all really came here for. It is my power rankings list, but that will be after this commercial break. This has been the Rankings Roundtable show. We'll be right back, baby.
Streetwear is not dead. The next wave in black fashion comes out the Bronx, New York. Rich Kid Clothing, picking up where FUBU, Rockaware, and Carl Kanai left off. Rich Kid is for the next generation of Get Fly fashion heads.
You are watching Team NBS Media. We are a digital media brand covering sports, entertainment, and lifestyle, with team members all across the country. Through our written content, podcasts, and video content, we bring you fresh and professional content. Interested in joining the team? Shoot us an email or DM. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the Rankings Roundtable show. I am your host, Thomas Brown Jr., and I did come alone this evening, but I promised the Team NBS Media crew that I was not going to pull a Devondre Campbell and leave them because it's just me. We don't do that, okay? You're not going to catch me on social media saying, Coach, I'm going to leave out like a Tyreek Hill. Don't have to worry about that tonight, okay? It's just me. All right. So with it just being me, this is the opportunity where y'all could do what y'all love to do best, which is talk about how good and how bad my list is. It is now time to present you my power rankings for week 16. Can we put it up, please? Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I am very proud of my list. Okay. Now I understand that, we've had a very bad relationship over the past few weeks when it comes to my list. A lot of disagreements. We had a lot of issues with the Broncos being in the top 10. We had a lot of issues when it comes to my list. Everybody else's list gets a pass, gets a break, gets some sense of understanding. I asked for that this week, okay? That's all I asked. All right. I'm gonna go from 10 to 1. All right. I got the Bucks at 10. 26 plus points in 4 straight games is very impressive. They went up against the Chargers defense, who is number 1, and dropped 40 on them like it was nothing. Baker Mayfield, 288 yards, 4 touchdowns. He did throw an interception, but if the Buccaneers can keep this up, they're going to be able to do something that not many teams can do in the same season. I've never seen a team who has been swept by one team, but still finds a way to host a playoff game in the same season. Never seen it before, but it looks like it's about to happen because Atlanta, if you saw them on Monday night, do not look like they're going to be winning this division. They don't trust Kirk Cousins, so much so that they had to bench him for Michael Penix. So, got to put the Bucs at 10 here. I have the Texans at 9. They're making a return on my list this week. Their defense, who should get a little bit more love, has allowed under 21 points in 3 of the last 4 games. CJ Stroud, he's having a little bit of a sophomore slump in comparison to last year, but it is okay. 131 yards, 2 touchdowns. They're starting to get in a little bit of a groove despite some of the injuries that they have going on offense. and not having a great rushing showing by Joe Mixon. So, got to have the Texans at 9. I have the Steelers dropping down to 8. Now, look, I understand that the Eagles beat them up, and they beat them up in the most beautiful way fashion, which is something I really enjoyed to see. But they did hold Saquon Barkley to 3.4 yards per carry, which not very many teams in the NFL can say they can do. Mind you, this is the same Saquon Barkley who's had 100-plus yards in 6 of the last 7 games. So for the Steelers defense to be able to do that is still pretty impressive. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, TJ Watt, 2 sacks on the day. Man, 11.5 on the year. I just really hope he's not out for an extended period of time, because if he is, you're missing on a lot of pressure that you're going to need, especially in the latter part of the season, going against Baltimore this week and going forward, especially in the playoffs. So, let's keep our eyes set on the Pittsburgh Steelers. 7, we have the Baltimore Ravens. Oh, boy. I understand it was the lowly Giants, but 292 yards passing from Lamar Jackson, 5 touchdowns. He has 34 touchdowns to just 3 interceptions on the year. That is ridiculous. It's impressive what they're able to do. We just hope that it kind of meshes up against the best teams in the NFL. We'll find out how they do against the Pittsburgh Steelers, a divisional rival, with potentially their division on the line. So we'll see what happens there. We have the Minnesota Vikings at 6, 30-plus points in 3 of the last 4 games. Aaron Jones, who has toted the rock very well for them this year, 86 yards, 4.6 yards per carry, and a touchdown on Monday night against the Bears. 70-plus yards in 3 of the last 4 games. It seems like it may not always be pretty, but they still find a way to put up points and put them up often. So I got to have the Vikings at 6. Give me the Packers at 5. They jumped the Vikings this week. 30-plus points in 4 straight games. 0 sacks allowed by the Packers O-line. It is impressive what they've been able to do. They've allowed 1 sack in the last 3 games. It's been very impressive what Green Bay has been able to do, and they're starting to peak at the right time. Maybe Toyotathon needs to be a thing that lasts all year. What do you say, Jordan Love? And then we also have the Lions at 4. They take a step back this week with the loss to the Bills. But Jared Goff, 494 yards, 5 touchdowns. Amon-Ra St. Brown had 193 yards of those 494, a touchdown and 14 receptions. And I enjoyed saying that stat line, simple fact that he was on my fantasy team and practically won me the week by himself, which was a beauty to behold. So we got the Lions at 4. I have the Kansas City Chiefs at 3. Their O-line has also not allowed a sack last week on 40 passing attempts, which is really impressive, all things considered. And a defense who had not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, but 6 turnovers this past Sunday. They have allowed under 18 points in the last 3 games. Look, man, it may not be the 40-point burgers that you know and love, but they are still legit. And they are enough to be number 3 on my list. Number 2 is those Buffalo Bills, baby. 90 points in the last 2 games. I don't really know what to say. I am at a loss for words every time I watch them play. It looks like Josh Allen might mess around and win the MVP, which is something that we didn't think was going to be the case just a couple weeks ago. But Josh Allen, 362 yards, 4 total touchdowns. This man's incredible. I mean, I mean, and it says it right here. If Josh Allen is not the MVP, then who is? Now, I, as an Eagles fan, would love to be biased and say that Saquon is that guy, but it's not the case. Okay, Josh Allen has had a fantastic year this year, which is enough to warrant him potentially winning the MVP. Can't really take it away from him this time around. Sorry. And number one, it is the lovely, I should say, Philadelphia Eagles at number one. This is no bias included here. I know that's crazy to say, but it's the truth. All right. The offense has had 26 plus points in 7 of the last 9 games. Jalen Hurts, is that what y'all wanted to see? 290 yards, 2 touchdowns. A.J. Brown, you were talking about getting the ball. You had a stern face in that locker room when they asked you about the passing game, and they said you said that was the issue. Well, we showed how much of an issue it wasn't this past Sunday. 8 receptions, 110 yards, and a touchdown. Hey, man, it's unbelievable what the Eagles are able to do despite all the drama that they have surrounding their team. It's impressive, man. And I have it's my number one team this week, which kind of shocked me when I was going through the top 10 list. It was kind of weird. I didn't want to believe it. Like, I was like, maybe Buffalo could be the number one. But then I realized that Buffalo, as much as they put up 90 points, they also gave up 86 points in that span of games as well. So we got to have the Eagles at number one for me. So that is my list. I am curious if there's anybody that hates it or loves it. Hopefully there's a lot of love today. But I'm curious to know what your top 10 list is. No Rams. I'm sorry. I mean, you won 12-6 in a rainstorm against the 49ers. I kind of need to see more. I mean, when you look at the other teams on the list, could you take the Rams over Houston? I wouldn't take them over the Buccaneers today. I don't know. I'm not ready to put them in the top 10 list just yet. I gotta see a much better offensive performance personally, well-rounded performance, if you will. You won with 4 field goals. Kind of want to put you in that conversation. So I'll leave the Rams alone this week. Now, they got the Jets, so I don't think it will be that much of a, big difference unless they, pull a Lamar and the Ravens and have 5 touchdowns. But yeah, I'm leaving the Rams alone. No Broncos. Look, man, I hope y'all saw the same game I did. I saw a Bo Nix game that had 3 interceptions. I also saw a Bo Nix game that had 3 touchdowns against the Indianapolis Colts, who I don't know what the hell's going on in Indy, but they look all sorts of miscombobulated, and that's an understatement. Yes, they won. They put up 30 points, but the way that they got 30 points was a little bit of a struggle, if you ask me. So I know I was bold enough to put the Broncos in last week, but as I went through therapy with Dan and Greg last week, I had to remember what Dan said. And maybe the Broncos record, it might be a little bit too good to be true. And I think that's a fair argument to say. And what they did with the Colts, despite them having 30 points, is I need to see more. I need to see a less turnover frequent game from Bo Nix and a defense who keep showing up, because it's definitely not the defense that I'm worried about. It's the offense being consistent for me. So that's why I got to have the Broncos out of there. But, okay, not bad. Out of the entire list, there's only 2 teams that y'all would want in there. I guess my question is, if you were to have those teams in there, who do you remove? That's my thing. If you're going to put the Rams and the Broncos in, who do you take out? I'm curious to know. Eagles are not better than the Bills. Look, if we're just having a heat of a moment because Josh Allen is that great over the past 2 games, then sure. Me personally, though, if we're talking about a team who is dominant on both sides of the ball, I would have to go with Philly. Like I mentioned earlier, the Buffalo Bills have given up 86 points over the past 2 games, which is insane. When you're talking about that versus a team in Philly who's holding teams under 20, it's like a dramatic difference. And when you're talking about the best team in the NFL, you're talking about a team who dominates on more than one front. And that's what Philly has done so far this year. And they did it again this past Sunday. So maybe not give up too many points, Buffalo. Maybe we might have a discussion. Because honestly, if we're being honest here, Josh Allen could put up all the points in the world. When we get to the playoffs, if the defense is just going to give up points like this, there's only but so many shootouts that Josh Allen could win. Now, prime example was when they played the Rams a couple weeks ago. They lost that game after the Rams put 44 points on. So the defense needs to tone it down a little bit. Now they do got the Patriots this week, so might be a little bit of a toss up. But yeah, I just think Buffalo just needs to be really, really, really tightened up defensively. Why is Buffalo higher than Detroit? Buffalo's higher than Detroit because number one, they beat them. Head-to-head matchup kind of matters here. 2, when we're talking about the best teams standing at this point, elimination style, the Bills are a more healthier team. The Detroit Lions have injuries all over the place, so that's the reason why I have the Lions underneath the Bills this week. Like, I'm just very weary about the Detroit Lions, especially with David Montgomery being out. It's kind of a struggle. Kansas City shouldn't be higher than 5. Okay. If you don't have them at 5, if they shouldn't be higher than 5, then who would your 5 be? Because I'm thinking about the other teams. Like, if you want to put Minnesota there, I guess, and knock them down, maybe. But to say that they're not a top 5 team in the league, I don't know. Baltimore should be higher than Buffalo. You sure? Sure. Like I said, with the head-to-head matchups, that's very fair. That's very fair to point out. I will also say that we're going by teams who have one of the best records in the NFL as well. And when you're talking about Buffalo and Baltimore, if they were to play today, I'm giving the edge to the Bills right now. Even though his team is bad, should Joe Burrow be in the MVP conversation? Ugh. He can. The MVP conversation is so hilarious to me because I feel like there's people that deserve to be in the room, and I feel like there should be some people that's in the building, and then there's some people that shouldn't even be remotely talked about at all. I think Joe Burrow, realistically, with the numbers, like you said, Greg, fantastic numbers this year, but he's not in the room, and that's because his team sucks. And I'm sorry, it goes to a team that has a winning record. that's led by a player who has shown his dominance throughout the entire year. And that's what Josh Allen and the Bills have done so far. And with Joe Burrow, I love his stats. But, yeah, unfortunately, because of the record and how bad Cincy has been defensively, like, I know y'all saw the pick six. That should have been a pick six. That wasn't a pick six because the guy won the fumble before he even got into the end zone. So the defense can't even handle success properly on defense. It's a terrible thing to behold. Can't have Joe Burrow in that conversation, unfortunately. But that's just the reality that we're living in. If we wanted to do that, like, I can think of so many years where Drew Brees could have won MVP because of his statistical, success throughout the year. But, just didn't win it because his team was 7-9. And you look at the guy who won MVP, a Brady, Peyton Manning, like those guys were number one seeds and had 13 plus wins on the season, and they played spectacularly well. So Joe Burrow, unfortunately, cannot be in the MVP conversation for me personally, but he's having one hell of a season, which kind of sucks. But what is the definition of MVP? Most valuable player. That's what the initials are. But I think when it comes to the NFL, it's who is the most dominating player on the best team. And right now, it's the Buffalo Bills and Josh Allen. Like I said, just a couple weeks ago, it was Saquon Barkley and nobody was batting an eye. But, after last week being held to 60 yards, 60 plus yards, I believe, like, kind of lost your hand in the race by default. Josh Allen, I've seen this story before. Saquon has changed the Eagles' offense, and that means MVP to me. Look, Greg, you're tugging on my heartstrings right now with that comment. I really appreciate it. But if you're looking at the stats, Lamar and Joe are better. Yeah, but their team's not winning. I mean, I'm sorry. Unfortunately, that's just the way it goes. Like, I love Lamar. Like I said, 34 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. You want to know why he was removed from the conversation just 2 weeks ago? Because the team was struggling to win games against big-time matchups like Philly. Like, the list goes on and on. So, they award the team who has won and the team, the guy who's been dominant on that run. MVP doesn't have a criteria for the NFL. I've always said they should have had an MVP and most outstanding player. I don't mind that. It does get to a point where if they were to integrate that, you would have to ask the question, like, is this like a participation award that you're handing out? You don't get the MVP, but get the most outstanding player instead here. Like, I don't know how that would fan out, but look, I get it. The Ravens are 9-5 on the year. I'm sorry. It's hard to beat a guy who had a week where he had 6 total touchdowns and 4 total touchdowns the following week. And he has one of the best records in the NFL. I don't know. I'm sorry. Jared Goff is an MVP? No. No, sorry. You don't get to throw 5 interceptions in a game and think that you're going to throw your name in the ring. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's impressive, though, but who was under more pressure to perform in the postseason? Lions, Bills, Eagles. Ooh. Under more pressure. I'm going to have to say Buffalo, which I've said this in back-to-back years now, simply because of how Kansas City has played. Kansas City, if they don't win the Super Bowl this year, no one's going to be like, oh, they had a horrendous season. No, they probably got to the AFC Championship, lost to the Buffalo Bills or whoever, and that was it, and that was that. No one's going to bat an eye and be like, wow, the Chiefs suck. No, I don't think they have anything to prove this year. Philly, I kind of feel like they already proved what they needed to prove this year as far as them just not repeating what they did last year with the 10-1 start and having to slump and just having a one-and-done season in the playoffs. I think they've proved that enough this year. Now, it would be nice for them to get deep into the playoffs, but yeah, I think out of all the teams, it will probably be Buffalo. I'm confused because it sounds like Steve Nash's situation with Kobe. Yeah, kind of. I mean, like I said, it's when it comes to the MVP conversation, it's unfortunately not black and white. It is not. It's not cutthroat. It's just, look, who's the best team? Who's the best player on that team? And is he worth winning the MVP award? Which, by the way, has always been a quarterback award. And with the way that Josh Allen's been playing this year, like with him leading the team to wins, you gotta put him at number one. So, and that's just today. He could easily stink up the joint next week, and we can have a totally different conversation. So, but if you were to ask me today, it would be Josh Allen. I would just kind of go there on that one. But going back to the question about the most pressure, it would definitely be Buffalo, because I don't know how many times we have to keep saying this about the Bills, but like, hey, this is the time to get the Chiefs. The Chiefs don't have this, they don't have that. They're missing this guy, they're missing that guy. Like, this is your chance, Buffalo. Last year it was your chance because you had them at home. We always thought, you know what? The one time we get them at home, we're going to beat them. Didn't happen. Travis Kelce worked the entire defense like it was a bunch of fun. This year, we got Patrick Mahomes that's limping. We got, they're missing Rashee Rice. The injuries that they have been dealing with this year, they're trying to integrate back Isaiah Pacheco, who broke his leg early on in the season. Like, these injuries shouldn't be enough to win a Super Bowl. I think that's the point I'm making. And the only team outside of maybe Baltimore that can get in their way is the Buffalo Bills. So I think that's the team that has the most pressure. I think the MVP conversation, especially when it comes with the media, they always find a way to move the goalposts. You're not wrong. I would just push back and say that it's kind of, like I said, it's not black and white. Like, it's not one of those things where a guy throws for 5,000 yards, he instantly wins the award. It's more so of different factors that you have to factor in, which is kind of the tricky part about making the case for guys in the MVP discussion. Like, I love Lamar. Lamar's had a fantastic year, but his team is 9-5. You want to know who else has a team that's 9-5? The Houston Texans. Do I want to put any of the guys in Houston in the conversation for MVP? No. So just because they have a 9-5 record or a winning above 500 record does not warrant them to be in a position to win the MVP, in my personal opinion. It comes with a lot of different factors that you got to consider. And in the media's retrospect, we love headlines anyway. This is the most narrative-driven sport in all of America. It's the NFL. So we love narratives. We love seeing guys, find a way to grind it out to get to the very top. And in Josh Allen's case, that's the narrative. Always coming up close, always coming up short. Always having to deal with Buffalo. Always have to deal with Kansas City. All these different obstacles he had to overcome. Yet he has a chance to win MVP. Sounds like a great narrative to me. That's kind of how they factor all those stuff in. Don't let me be a voter of MVP because lot of people be mad at me. But yeah, that's it does get a little bit quirky after a while. I would definitely say that. But enough about the list. Enough about the MVPs. Because this segment right here is my personal favorite. This is my time where we can take the opportunity to make fun of all of the terrible teams in the NFL and do it unapologetically. So, without further ado, I present to you the Stinky 5. Oh, yes. Shout out to Joe producing. I love that SpongeBob thing. It's been the greatest thing that's ever been a part of the show. Okay, I love it. Love the soundbite. All right. Now, again, the Stinky 5 does not come in a particular order. This is just an opportunity to make fun of the worst teams in the NFL. Now, my first team, they're bad. They're real bad. How bad are they, you may ask? Let's just break this down, okay? How do you have 2 pick sixes in the same game in the first half, and y'all didn't pull them until the fourth quarter? I am talking about you, Tennessee Titans. I don't know how you do it. All of you Tennessee Titans fans out there, I don't know how you're able to sleep at night dealing with the fact that you have one of the most expensive offensive offseason additions with Calvin Ridley and Tony Pollard and L'Jarius Sneed to have performances like you had against Cincinnati this past Sunday because of your quarterback. It's pretty bad, man. Like, I kind of wish they were done with the whole Will Levis thing, because the Mayo-induced quarterback is not it. No more. No mas is what Tennessee is saying today. I love it. So I got to give the Tennessee Titans number 1 here. Number 2, you saw them on Monday night. Man, I feel like it's time that we need to really be serious on how bad it's been. The Chicago Bears have got to be the most underwhelming team I've seen this year. You have an offense that's led with Caleb Williams at the helm, DeAndre Swift, Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, DJ Moore, Cole Kmet. But, you know, an offense usually have 11 guys. Well, apparently they forgot that they need to upgrade the guys blocking for the quarterback to get to those weapons. It's called an offensive line. It's brutal. I was watching that game on Monday and was like, Caleb is running for his life, and there is nothing that he can do about it. Every time he snaps the ball, he is ready to run around in circles like a chicken with his head cut off. And it's unfortunate, man. I don't like kicking. Actually, you know what? I do. I do like kicking people when they're down. When it comes to the worst franchises in the NFL, man, it sucks in Chicago. I don't know how y'all do it. I've seen podcasts. We have a podcast here on Team MBS, Foul on the Play, where it just seems like every week, Dan and Christy are like having their mini rage sessions on live television for everybody to see, week in and week out, talking about how bad the Bears are. I feel bad for them. I don't know what else there is for me to say. I genuinely feel bad for them. But man, this team is bad. And if I'm a head coach who's looking to, you know, get an NFL job, like, this is a very big ask if you're going to be a head coach of this team. I just want to say Justin Fields wasn't a problem in Chicago. I mean, I don't know. I do feel like I don't want to go as far as to say that Justin Fields was a problem in Chicago. I will also say that, it was one of those cases where they did have to make a decision on whether they was going to pay him that 5th-year option. Because did y'all forget about that discussion? It wasn't just as simple as we're going to get rid of Justin Fields for Caleb Williams. It was, are you going to be willing to pay Justin Fields? That was the question. And are you going to be willing to do that? They said no. I thought it was smart. That was fine. Now for those who say that Justin Fields was the problem in Chicago, y'all haven't seen anything yet. So I'll just have the Chicago Bears there. Bears, Giants, Jets, and Giants. Yes! I'm glad you're staying in New York. Because let's talk about those Giants, baby. They got it so bad that they don't even know who to start at quarterback. Both of them suck. Both of them hurt. But they got to play somebody. It's like musical chairs every other day. I'm seeing a report about Tommy DeVito starting. Drew Lock starting this week. Drew Lock is starting. Tommy DeVito gets in because Drew Lock got hurt. Or the other way around. In either way, they still find a way to struggle to get Malik Neighbors to football. And I will say, as an Eagles fan, I enjoy seeing them being the absolute worst. Because they deserve it. They deserve it. This was the same team that thought it was a good idea to let Saquon Barkley walk. Now, eventually, I will come up with a little jingle, a Christmas jingle, giving a lot of gratitude to the New York Giants organization for allowing that to happen. And I also want to make a jingle for them putting it on worldwide display with Hard Knocks, with their owner talking about, I don't know if I'm asleep at night if Saquon's a Philadelphia Eagle. Man, I love it here. I really do. Everything bad that happens to the New York Giants is beautiful. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. They just can't catch a break, man. And now I'm seeing Malik Neighbors throwing the ball with Shedeur Sanders during Heisman ceremony week, all that good fun stuff. Looks like Shedeur might head to the New York Giants. Please. I'm asking for Shedeur. I know he's not hoping that he ends up as a New York Giants. That is a dead mission. Not happening. Not happening at all. So the New York Giants are there. Titans are in the conversation for being one of the worst teams. Absolutely, baby. How dare you trust somebody who has a Mayo-induced cologne line? Please. I'm not supposed to take you serious. Now, another team that you saw on Monday night, who's also very, very bad, is the Las Vegas Raiders, who I don't know. I don't know what there is to say anymore. I had Sincere McCormick because I had no one else to get in the waiver wire. And I really needed him. This past Monday to get me 10 points. Sounds about like a, cool 30, 40 yards and a touchdown maybe. Something along those lines. Coming to find out he got hurt. Once he got hurt, apparently the whole offense was inept. And, they had Desmond Ridder at quarterback, which I had some people tell me that was supposed to be his revenge game. Well, if that's your revenge game, keep it to yourself because that was horrendous. Never want to see that on live television, never again. That was just abysmal with the Raiders, man. Max Crosby's done for the year. It's a done deal, man. I don't know. Ashmere, if you're listening to this as a Raiders fan, I don't know how you do this. This is mind-boggling, man. I cannot imagine having to deal with this year in and year out. Struggling organization, like can't get the coach right. It's brutal. I can only imagine and feel how bad it is to be a Raiders fan today. Wow. You know what? I have another team, man. And it's the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think even with them having a baby shootout with the New York Jets this past Sunday, I think it was very apparent of just how bad they were. Now, Mac Jones at quarterback, we all know, is not a good option to have. Just ask New England, they'll tell you. His next couple years as their quarterback was pretty rough. And we understood that. But, my God, it seems like they can't get out their own way, whether they have people or not. They had plenty of opportunities to beat the Jets this past Sunday and literally could not get out their own way. Penalty after penalty. They literally decided not to guard Devontae Adams the rest of the game in the second half. Messed around and had 200 yards by himself. It was ridiculous. Yeah, I'm sorry. It's not really worth me spending a lot of my time on the Jacksonville Jaguars. It's a done deal, okay? They suck. It is horrendous watching them play. Those who are Jaguars fans, I don't know how you do it. It is a struggle, I can imagine. It's a sad state of affairs, man. And that is my stinky list. Yeah, that's my list for the worst teams in the NFL. I do want to cover something real fast. We did find out that Michael Penix is replacing Kirk Cousins this week, which makes me wonder, like, what if, and I had a conversation with a couple of my buddies about this the other day, what if Michael Penix is just as bad or worse than what we've seen from Kirk Cousins so far? And I gotta wonder, like, is this really going to be the case? Because obviously, if Penix was ready to take over the reins, because look, you don't get to throw, 8 interceptions throughout a stretch of games and just expect to still be the starter. That's kind of ridiculous. I don't care how much money you're getting paid a year. But there was a reason why they decided not to entertain playing Penix as long as they did. I hope I'm wrong. I actually think that he's pretty good personally. Seeing what he did in Washington. But there was a reason why he did not get playing time throughout this year. And we'll have to see how he fares this week. But I just think the fact that you just benched a guy that you're paying $140 million to just rot on the bench is ridiculous. It's ridiculous to me. But it'll be interesting to see how he fares, and hopefully, we can have Kyle Pitts get the football. Bijan Robinson can get more involved. Drake London can have more than just 3 catches on the day. It would be something that would probably never been seen before in Falcons offense. So that is interesting to see and keep an eye on going forward. But yeah, man. Kyle Pitts is the hot girl at the bar that isn't. Yes. What's that GIF right there? Right there. That comment right there. That's it. That's it. Are we really ready to have that conversation about Kyle Pitts now? Like, Is he just not that good enough? Is that what we're willing to go with? And if that's the case, I would hate for Atlanta to trade him to a contending team. Like, could you imagine him with an offense like Houston, for example? C.J. Stroud, Joe Mixon, Stephon Diggs when healthy, Nico Collins, Tank Dell, Dalton Schultz, or you might have to trade him in this respect, but Kyle Pitts, pretty dangerous to me. So I don't know. I don't know if I'm ready to have that conversation about Kyle Pitts yet, because he's not even getting featured enough in his own offense right now. So I'll wait that one out. But it's an interesting conversation to have eventually, if it gets there. But I want to thank all of you for tuning into this week's episode of the Rankings Roundtable show. Thank you to our sponsors for this episode. Really appreciate you. Every single comment, everybody who's liked the video, share, subscribe. We appreciate all that y'all are able to do as far as the support that you give to Team NBS Media. Greatly appreciate it. Doesn't go unnoticed whatsoever. Pitts was used by the Florida Gators correctly. Yeah, I mean, he hasn't been utilized yet. So until he's utilized in his full capacity, I cannot warrant whether he's good or bad or not. That's just my personal thoughts on it. I just feel like we need to pump the brakes on it. So, yeah, I really appreciate y'all for tuning in. Make sure to join us on Friday for a college football playoff show. It's going to be a lot of fun. We got some college football games. Very interesting college football games as we get into the playoff time of year. Very excited to see that. And also, we have a return on Friday as well. It will be the Off the Dome coming back in full swing. You'll see me again Fridays, 1 p.m. Eastern time. We're going to be having a lot of fun. We're going to be discussing about a little bit of everything. It's going to be a little bit different. So tune in for that. Have a promo for that pretty soon on tomorrow. For those of you who want to follow me or have conversations with me on anything NFL related or NBA related, more than welcome. Here's my username here. Can't even talk tonight. Forgive me. My goodness. Instagram, X, or Twitter, whatever it is you're fancy these days. That's where you can find me at __ terrific Tom __. I have not seen a comment that has considered me changing the username. So, Mark, unfortunately, this is going to have to stay until we see something different. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I am the host of the Rankings Roundtable show, as you clearly see here. I am the host of the Off the Dome show that will be airing back on Friday, 1 p.m. Eastern time. It's going to be a lot of fun. Tune into that one. Tune in to college football playoff as we go live on Friday. Thank y'all so much for tuning in. Fly, Eagles, fly. And we are out of here, baby.